Let's talk about the methods section. It's where so many promising student research papers just kind of stumble. So in this explainer, we're going to give you, the teachers, a really clear framework to help guide your students. We're going to move them from simply describing what they did to powerfully defending it. And trust me, that's the key to turning a good paper into a great one.
So what's the big problem? Well, it all starts with avoiding this one huge pitfall. This quote just gets right to the heart of the most common and, let's be honest, frustrating problem we all see. We're going to call it the definition trap, and it is hands down the #1 reason students miss out on top scores for this section.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to break down that definition trap. Then, we'll build the solution with what I like to call the 3 pillars: replicability, alignment, and defense. And then, we're going to wrap up by turning all this theory into a practical classroom activity you can use like tomorrow.
All right, first things first. Let's really diagnose the problem before we jump to the cure. Because understanding this trap is the absolute first step to helping your students sidestep it completely.
So this is what that trap looks like in a student's paper. They spend a whole paragraph, you've seen it, defining what a survey is, in general. Instead of explaining the specific design of their survey, how they administered it, and, the most crucial part, why that specific tool was the best possible choice for their research question. Look, the scores already know what a survey is. What they need to know about is the student's unique process.
So how do we fix this? Well, let's start building our solution with pillar #1, replicability. I want you to think of this as the recipe for their research. It has to be so clear, so precise, that someone else could walk in, follow it, and bake the exact same cake. And this is the baseline, right? This is the absolute non-negotiable part. If another researcher can't figure out the exact steps a student took, the whole study loses credibility. The key words here, and you'll want to stress this with your students, are detailed and precisely. It's all about leaving zero room for guesswork. Okay, let's make this real. This example from a study on Tetris and stress, it's perfect. Just look at the language. Randomly assigned, pre-task survey, 10-minute task, post-task survey. See how clear that is? They're sequential, they're measurable steps, there's no ambiguity, no guesswork. That, right there, is replicability in action.
Okay, so you've got your recipe down, pat. That's great. But now we need to build a bridge. This second pillar, alignment, is all about making sure the method, the recipe, actually connects the research question to the findings. It's not enough to just have a good method. It has to be the right method for the question they're trying to answer.
And listen, this isn't just me saying this is a good idea. This is baked directly into the AP Research rubric. The top scores literally go to students who don't just state their method, but logically defend the alignment. That word, defend, that's the magic word. It elevates the entire section. And we're going to come right back to it in our third pillar. This right here, this is the million-dollar question to give your students. Just have them pause and ask themselves this. It forces that critical evaluation. If their question is about student stress, does a method that measures their height make any sense? Well, no, of course not. But sometimes the misalignment is way more subtle, and this question helps them catch it.
And that brings us to our final and honestly most critical pillar. This is the one that really separates the good papers from the great ones. If replicability is the recipe and alignment is the bridge, then this, the defense, is the closing argument. This is where the student stops being just a student and becomes a true researcher, justifying every single choice they made.
And check this out. This slide just nails the difference. On the left, we used a survey. It's fine. It's a description. It's passive. But look at the right. A survey was chosen because it was the optimal method. See that? It's an active defense. It explains why the survey was chosen, calling it the optimal method and giving the rationale. Getting specific data from a lot of people, fast. It's a justification, not just a fact.
All right, talk is cheap, right? Let's see how this actually works in a real high-scoring paper. We're going to go back to that awesome student example about using Tetris to reduce stress. Let's deconstruct how this student just masterfully defends their choices. So take a look at this. The student is so clear. First, they state their choice, the Likert scale was chosen. But they don't stop there. They immediately follow up with the defense. They explain why they made that choice. And what's really smart is they even acknowledge the limitations, that more scientific methods weren't available. By doing that, they're showing critical thinking and justifying their very practical decision. It's brilliant. And here we go again, another perfect example. What was the choice? To run the experiment during finals week. And the defense? Well, that timing wasn't an accident. It was a strategic decision to make sure the participants were actually feeling what was being studied: stress. This choice makes their data so much stronger. The takeaway here is that every single decision, even something as simple as timing, is an opportunity to build your defense.
So this is basically a cheat sheet you can hand directly to your students. It pushes them to think just like the author of that Tetris paper. For every single part of their method, they should be able to answer the why question. Why the specific location? Why this software? Why this sample size? Answering these questions, that's how they build their argument.
Okay, we've got the theory down, the 3 pillars. But how do you actually get your students to do this? Let's talk about a really concrete classroom activity that can help them master these skills. I love this idea. Have your students become detectives. Seriously, the best way for them to learn how to write like a scholar is to read like one. By tasking them with hunting for examples of replicability, alignment, and defense in real, professional papers, you totally demystify the whole process.
And this table is the perfect tool for their investigation. It's basically their detective's notebook. You can give this right to your students, and it guides them to pull specific quotes that show alignment and replicability. It forces them to see how the pros do it, how established researchers justify their choices, and it gives them a perfect model for their own work. And in the end, it all comes down to this one question. This is the question that really captures the entire shift we want to see. A methods section isn't just a diary of what happened. It is a persuasive, logical argument that the path they chose was the best possible way to find the answer. The moment your students start building that argument, that's when you'll know they're on their way to an absolutely exceptional score.